I love that opening. Hi, family. Aloha mai kako to everybody else. Hello and welcome. Today is going to be a bit spontaneous. Oh, actually, not a bit. Today is going to be 100% spontaneous for a couple of reasons. One of which is that this was not a planned episode, it is completely impromptu. And I guess the reason why I decided to do this is specifically because um, just the way that this past weekend went and how relevant it is um, to me, and kind of it's been on the top of my mind. So with that said, I hope that everybody is having a fantastic weekend. I hope that everybody is doing well, and that goes for obviously my kids as well as everybody else out there who just needs some love and support. So let's go ahead and dive straight in. And this is, I guess, one of the quick lessons that I wanted to address today. And I would love to see a response, in the comments or in the replies. Shoot me a DM, anything along those lines. But I have an important question for you guys. As a parent, not a parent, as a parent, is it our job to teach our kids to fish or to give them a fish? And I want to give everybody just a quick moment to sit and think about that. Is it our job to teach our kids to fish, or is it our job to give them a fish? And I suppose that that is going to be the subject of this sudden, spontaneous lesson today. Anyways, it's not a trick question, and I won't pretend to be the authority on all things, parenting or otherwise, but this is my take on it. And my answer for that question is both, right? Obviously, as a parent, particularly when our kids are younger, um, they don't have the capacity to fish, right? Like when they're toddlers or infants, they can't hold a fishing rod. Maybe when they grow up a little bit, the bait or the worms make them a little bit squeamish, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But initially speaking, when our kids are younger, it is primarily our job to give them a fish. However, as they continue to mature and as they continue to grow more capable, it is my belief and strong advocacy that it becomes more and more our responsibility to teach them to fish instead of simply giving them a fish. So, um, so there's that. Now, T-Mad, why are you talking about this? And that's a fantastic question. Let me take a little bit of a dive with you. So we're going to rewind. A couple months ago, I was actually speaking with one of my kids' therapists. And for those of you, I guess nobody would really know since I haven't talked about it on the channel. But for those of you who are especially unaware, I had the opportunity to go through divorce within the past 2 years. Let's see here. It is currently February. Oh, no, it's March today. It's March of 25. November of 24 was the 1 year anniversary of my divorce. So, what is that, like almost 18 months now? I've been divorced legally. And then we had spent about 9 to 10 months previous to that separated. Um, and so, I forget exactly, but there are like five primary areas that anybody needs to be particularly aware of or sensitive to their mental health. And a lot of those things are like housing changes, which my kids were going through due to the split, changes in parenting or custody, which is something else that my kids were also going through. And then I forget what the third is, something like changes in network or something along those lines. But the long and short of it is that my kids were experiencing like three of the major five life events at the same time as they were going through the divorce with me and with their other parent. And so it was very important to me that they had the opportunity to see a therapist because I'm not sure where all of us stand as parents, but for me, I am under no illusions that I am everything that my kids need, right? Because I'm not. As a human, I am error prone, I am accident prone, I am imperfect. And so I might have many of the answers, many of the capacities, many of the abilities that my kids need, but not all of them, right? And as I talk with my kids about, like when I need a new transmission in the car, can I technically probably figure it out? Yeah, between me and YouTube and Google, I probably could. But the most straightforward way is you take it to a mechanic, right? If I break my femur, could I work it out for myself? Yeah, I could go out in the backyard. I could find a branch. I could, make a splint for myself and probably work things out. But is that going to give me the best outcome? No. If I break my femur, the best way to do that is to go to a doctor and get those things fixed. So I'm a huge advocate for mental health in the sense that just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not a need. In fact, if we were to flip the script and realize that our brain and our mental health really that's the one driving the bus, right? That's the one driving the bus is our brain and our mental health. And so if the thing or the one that's in charge of everything is having a difficult time, to me, that's a pretty big red flag that, hey, we ought to get some help. And so that's my take on mental health. And I advocated strongly for my kids to get therapy because they were experiencing like three of life's most major events. Anyways, I digress. But moving on, I was speaking with my children's therapist, and the therapist, because one of the things that I like to do is, and I'm not sure if you're all ready for this, but I'm going to lay it on you whether or not you're ready. As their parents, you guys, the number one impact, the number one place where kids learn things, pick things up, imitate behavior, etc., is through us, right? Through their parents. So if our kids are having a tough time, guess who the number one cause probably is? Us, their parents, right? If they are having a difficult time, 99% of the time it's going to be because of something we as their parents are doing or saying or role modeling or all of the above, etc. So for me, when I talk with my kids as therapists, one of the number one questions I ask is, hey, do you see any red flags? What can I be doing to fix this, right? Like how can I be helping my kids? What can I be doing better? So as I was speaking with my kids therapist, the therapist reached out to me and was like, your kid is amazing, which I already knew that. Your kid is amazing, but for some feedback, they seem emotionally underdeveloped. They seem immature for their age emotionally. And I mean, I don't take that personally. I think way too many of us take way too many things personally. Um, but right, like if for those of you who know my kids, I mean, not gonna lie, they're kind of amazing. All of them, like are either at or above grade level for like reading, writing, math, comprehension, etc. All of them are like at or above grade level for social behaviors, for the ability to create friendships, develop friendships, etc. All of them are incredibly responsible here in the home, at least in my home. I can't speak to the other one, but they have chores, they earn their money for doing their chores, etc. But just because they're doing well in like all these other areas, right, doesn't mean that there's no room for improvement, right? Like if I think of like the Olympics, and this is just an off the top of my head example, but just because somebody is like a world class athlete at the long jump, right? That does not mean that they're going to do well for interpretive dance. You know what I mean? And I feel like as parents, we fall into that category. At least I fall into that category way too much. We're like, oh, look, they're doing so well here, so they must be, by correlation, doing well here. And that's not how that works, right? Just because they are a gold medalist, and let's take the opportunity to celebrate the gold medal. You're a gold medalist in the long jump. Holy frick, that's amazing. You are so cool. Round of applause. But just because you are a gold medalist at the long jump does not mean that you are also going to even qualify for the Olympics for interpretive dance. Now, I don't know if interpretive dance is even really a thing, but if it is, I wouldn't do very well at it. And this was the kind of the understanding that I was creating with my therapist or with their therapist is, hey, look, they're doing really well in these areas, but your child is a little emotionally underdeveloped, is a little emotionally immature. Um, that might be an area, an opportunity for growth. And I completely agreed. In fact, after that conversation and that feedback, I went and I Googled a couple things. And one of the things, I guess I'll just quote Google again. Google, I'm just a guy. I'm just a middle-aged dad. Please don't sue me. Your research results are what fuels most of the world. I hope that I can quote you here. Everybody, this comes from Google. This is not me. Anyways, from Google. Um, Signs of an emotionally immature person are that emotions escalate significantly. They may cry easily, get overly angry, or throw a temper tantrum when they don't get their way. I'm going to repeat that. Emotions escalate significantly. They may cry easily, get overly angry, or throw a temper tantrum when they don't get their way. And for me as a parent, I had to take that feedback, right? One, not only because this person who is educated and certified in mental health has given me this feedback, but also now, objectively speaking, I am seeing signs or being told that there are signs for this behavior. And if I'm honest, I had to take a step back, right? Set my ego aside and say, yes, this is absolutely accurate. Um, this describes many of my children perfectly. Um, Oftentimes when the kids come back to my home, fights break out spontaneously over like the simplest things, like where they sit for mealtime. Now, I do have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, or now a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. Would I expect that behavior from them? Sure, probably. The problem is I also have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old who also participate in this behavior, right? When we go places in the van, I see huge drama break out over where we're sitting, right? Like these backbiting comments of like, oh, well, you took this spot this time, da 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 da. Anyways, fights break out spontaneously all the time over very minute details. One of the other things that happens is we have extreme highs and extreme lows that happen very frequently. Like what will start out as like a tumbling match with the family because we're primarily boys. And so we'll start wrestling. And then out of nowhere, like 5 or 10 minutes in, the wrestling becomes like this god awful, just emergency because somebody's going to die because there's a scratch. And then I also see lots of temper tantrums over minor details. In fact, one of my boys, he's 7, but like he will specifically go out of his way. Like if there's blood at about anything, right? And and what he'll tend to do is so he picks his nail beds and then he'll make them bleed, which I think most of us do. Him, though, he'll pick his nail beds, he'll bleed, and then it's the end of like the world. Like it's like, oh, woe is me. Oh, I've lived such a short life. Father, forgive me, for I must now die. And so, like, it's the end of the world anytime this kid finds himself able to draw blood. In fact, it almost seems like he intentionally tries to draw blood so that he can be catered to, but we won't get into that right now. Anyways, again, from Google, emotions escalate significantly. They may cry easily, get overly angry, or throw a temper tantrum when they don't get their way. And all of these signs of an emotionally immature or underdeveloped individual described most of my kids' behavior. So, why do I bring this up? And why am I even doing this episode in the first place? Here's why. So, fast forward to this last weekend, right? My oldest is having his birthday party, and and I love him dearly. I really do love him dearly. But 2 weekends ago, it was my custodial weekend, and 2 weekends ago, the poor guy wasn't. I mean, he wasn't being able to cope, right? He literally spent all weekend with me agonizing over what he should do for his birthday. And I mean, we spoke like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. He's like, hey, what should I do? Where should I go? Should I do A, B, and C? Should we go to X, Y, and Z? And it was actually really interesting because for those of you who know my oldest, he is He's a pretty incredible kid. He's a trailblazer in many senses. When he has a goal, he gets it in his brain and he just goes and he does it. And it's really cool to watch. He's a really cool person to know, to be around, to see. And so it was really surprising to me that at his age and for this occasion, I mean, he was gobsmacked. Like he had no idea what to do. And he agonized all weekend over his birthday about what to do for his birthday. Well, as his father, and most importantly, in the interest of teaching him to fish, right? Not giving him a fish. Because if it was my 4 year old or now 5 year old, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hey, let's go do this. Let's go here. Let's bring these people. Done deal. But he's not 4 or 5. He's a teenager. And so, in the interest of teaching him to fish and not giving him a fish, I did encourage him, right? I let him know, like, hey, bud, just so you know, there's no wrong choices here, right? You won't make a mistake. It's your birthday. You can't mess up here. All ideas are good ideas. The other thing that I did was I supported him. I reminded him frequently. I was like, hey, bro, you are super smart. You are super strong. You're super capable. And um, I think that whatever you come up with is going to be fantastic. And so, in these ways, I was trying to support him in making a decision without making it about me and telling him what we were going to do. And the poor guy, I mean, he spent literal days going back and forth about what he should. And honestly, the word should really does bother me so much because we use it way too often. Like should is such a subjective term. It means different things to different people. And so when he's saying things like, well, what should I do? There is no right or wrong choice, which means that shouldn't even be a part of as shouldn't even be a part of the question. It's not what should you do, it's what do you want to do. Anyways, I digress. And yeah, we spent Friday, Saturday, and most of the day Sunday kind of going back and forth as he agonized over something over what to do for his birthday. And then Sunday afternoon slash evening came. And it was interesting because there was a really dramatic turn. Suddenly on Sunday, all of the anxiety, all of the unease, unrest was gone, right? Suddenly on Sunday, he knew what he was doing. And he came to me and he's like, hey, Dad, we're going to go here and here. We're going to do this and this. And then I guess what really perked my ears or, raised my eyebrow was that not only did he know what he was doing and where he was going, but on top of that, he had criticisms for the ideas that I had discussed with him. Now, I emphasize that I actively did not plant seeds because I did not want his birthday to be about me. I wanted his birthday to be about him, a reflection of his desires, of his wants and needs, and his plans. And so I did discuss some options, but at no point did I have any investment in what he did so long as it was his idea. And so when suddenly Sunday afternoon and evening came and he had this dramatic change in behavior, and then not only that, but he had critiques for the ideas that he and I had discussed that raised an eyebrow. It raised an eyebrow. And then what's more is that I started getting feedback that were very odd, that were feedback that I would not expect from a 14-year-old. For example, one of the things he said was that, well, Dad, it's a really big deal to drive 2 hours away, which was one of the ideas that I had discussed with him. To who? To who is it a big idea or a big deal to drive 2 hours away? For those of you who live or have grown up in major cities, right? So for example, I grew up primarily in Southern California, not all the way, but 2 hours is that's a short drive to somewhere of interest, right? Like Six Flags, Knott's Berry Farm, Disneyland. Like for those of us that have lived in very populous areas, an hour to 2 hours, sometimes that's just our grocery store run is an hour to 2 hours, right? And so it was interesting to me because that's one of the things he said is he said, Well, Dad, it's a big deal to drive 2 hours away. To who? To who is it a big idea? Because what's funny, bud, is that this wasn't a big idea to you on Friday and Saturday and even earlier today, but suddenly now that it's Sunday afternoon and evening, it's a big deal to drive 2 hours. Interesting. Interesting that you didn't have any of those thoughts or feedback previous to this. Um, and so if those for those of you who are watching and are picking up on what I'm putting down, it sure sounded a lot like somebody else had given him a fish, right? That somebody else was like, hey, I'm not interested in you learning how to fish. I'm interested in giving you a fish, right? Because oftentimes, and particularly in the world that we live in, when I give you a fish, what does it come with? Conditions. Almost always, particularly the older that we get, when somebody offers you a fish, it comes with conditions. And it sure as heck sounded to me like somebody else had given him a fish, and we will get into the details later. Anyways, so I guess the point of it is that I was deeply disappointed, right? Because there's this kid that is just intensely capable, intensely intelligent, and he didn't trust himself to plan his own birthday. You guys, what? I remember every birthday from like 1 year old to like 20-year old. I had my birthday party for the following birthday planned on my current birthday, right? Like when I was 12, I was already making plans for my 13th birthday. And when I was 13, I was already making plans for my 14th birthday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was stoked out of my brain for my birthday as a kid. And so the fact that this person who I know that is, I mean, incredibly capable, incredibly intelligent, and also incredibly, responsible and caring, did not trust himself to plan his own birthday. You guys, that hurt. I'm not going to lie. As a parent, that really hurt to realize that I had not helped him cultivate trust in himself, that I had not helped him to cultivate trust in his opinions, or even cultivate, the opinion making process. And so it was really interesting to me that at his age, like he was more worried about failing. He was more worried about things going bad than he was realizing that it's your birthday, bro. Like this is one of the discussions that I had with him on the weekend that I had him. I was like, dude, this is your day. Like there are 364 days for everybody else in your life, but this day, this 365th day is yours. Forget everybody else. Throw caution to the wind. Plan what you will have. Anyways, and so I was really disappointed. In fact, I was nearly heartbroken that not only did this kid not trust himself to make his own birthday plans, but that somebody else had robbed him of that opportunity, right? Had taken that opportunity for him to learn to trust himself, to learn to trust his decision making. And I was really let down. But it didn't end there, right? Because then what began happening was that not only had he been fed these plans and fed these opinions, but on top of that, now I was being asked to be complicit in those plans. I was being asked to be complicit in supporting these ideas. And I was being asked to go places that I had not agreed to. And I was being asked to pay for things that had not been discussed. And mind you, we're now like 24 to 48 hours before his birthday. So it's not like this is a month ago where I had time to weigh things out or discuss things. Like we're basically up to the deadline and I'm being told, hey, go here, hey, do this. So for many of you who know me personally, I 100% have no problem with the word no. Absolutely not. I have no issue with letting you down because you put your hopes and expectations where they didn't belong. I've got no problem letting you down because how did you get to where you're at? Wasn't through me. Because if you got to where you're at through our discussions, then guess what? I am meeting those expectations. If you got to where you're got through mutual plan making, through mutual agreements, through mutual whatever, then I'm there and I'm doing what I said I'm going to do because I'm a man of my word. So if you got yourself somewhere that you didn't belong and then you're let down that I'm not going to join you there, that's on you, not on me. So I have absolutely no issue saying no. And that is exactly what I said. I was approached, I was told, hey, be here, hey, do this, hey, pay for this thing. And I was like, bro, what? No, absolutely not. And yeah, basically, since this other person had been the one to give a fish, this other person could also bear the responsibility of seeing things through. And to many of you, in fact, many, maybe even to most of you, that sounds harsh. Okay. And I'm not the one that created the plan. I'm not the one that set the expectation. So I sure as shoot am not going to be the one to save the day for something that I mean, yeah, that I had no bearing on. Anyways, so I want to take a quick moment and scale myself back. I'm now very emotionally vested in what took place. But to all my independent parents out there, and when I say independent, I don't mean that like, ooh, strong and independent. Like, no. To all of you parents that are literally, legitimately out there paying your own bills. To all of you parents who are literally, legitimately out here paying for everything that your child does, every meal that your child eats, every toy that your child plays with, every piece of clothing that your child wears. If you are doing all of those things without support of any kind, I regard you as an independent parent. Those of you who are independent parents and have to deal with someone who teaches through giving a fish instead of teaching to fish, that teaches through enabling, you might find yourself asking, how do I parent ability and independence through overwhelming codependence and through overwhelming enabling? And that, I guess, is the next thing that I wanted to move on to with this impromptu episode, is to all of you parents that are doing your best out there, to all of you independent parents who, I mean, like, without you, your kids' worlds would fall apart, and still you're being pushed back against because you're not doing things the way that somebody else wants you to do them. This part of this message is for you, okay? What do you do and how do you deal? Here's the answers that I found, and I hope they help you. Step one, as always, give yourself some space. And most importantly, give your kids some space, okay? Because if there's anything that you learn how to do in this life before you die, it's those two things: to take space for yourself and to give space to your kids. Because guess what? The issue is not your child. Almost always, the issue is not your child. And if the issue is your child, independent or not, I hate to break this to you, it's probably because of you, right? Like, they probably learned something or picked something up they shouldn't have from what you were doing, AKA what you were teaching them. And so just remember, you guys, the issue is not your child. More than likely, it's what they've been taught, or specifically what they've learned. Their behavior, their choices, their decisions, you guys, they're not an attack, right? They're not an attack. In fact, more often than not, these behaviors and choices and decisions are a plea for help, right? They're your child asking, like, look, I've come as far as I know how to with my abilities and knowledge. Please help me because I'm not being successful. And so step one, as with any conflict, and I mean, really just a universal law of life, take some space for yourself. And in this case, give space to your kid, but whoever it is in your story, in your realm, give them space too, because heaven knows they need it. And if they don't take it, give it to them, because you will end up on the better end of things, not them. Whether or not they take it, give them space. Step two, right? Remember that just as much as your child needs space, step two is remember that the child is not your enemy. Okay? You guys, your kids are not your enemy. More often than not, who is the enemy is the influence in their life in the background, right? And in this case, for me, it's their codependent adult trying to play puppeteer. But you guys, just because my son came at me with like, "Hey, this is what I'm gonna do. Your idea was bad," and yada 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 yada. Is that what he said? Sure. But you guys, it's like that was just what he said because that's what he was told, right? And this is really important. I actually wasn't even planning on going here. If your kids are consistently not taking your advice, if your kids are consistently not following your example, taking your lead, it's because you haven't built that trust and foundation with them where they feel empowered in their lives through your leadership. Does that make sense? For example, I mean, I used to play football, but like at the end of the day, right? Like if the coach, one of one of the things that I hated the most in football, particularly when I was a lineman, was like my coach. I still remember he was like the laughing stock of the whole team. But there was this lineman coach that, like, he was so obese, he was so morbidly obese that just by raising his arm, his belly, like the bottom half of his belly would slip out from his shirt or his hoodie or whatever he had on. And so he would raise his arm to give us commands, and like the bottom half of his belly was hugely exposed. Guess who we as a team hated listening to? This coach. Why? Because he can't do the things that he's asking us to do. What do you mean run a lap? Why don't you try walking a lap without having heart failure? And so for us, we hated listening to this coach because he was a poor leader, because he was a poor example of the things he was trying to teach. And so, as a parent, this is a really good opportunity to take a step back. And if you're finding that you are consistently not getting rewarded in your relationship with your kids, it's probably because you are not a trustworthy example of success that your kids are looking for, right? And that egg, that nutshell, I'm just going to leave that for a completely different episode because that's deep. And I mean, I hate to say it, but most of you might even be appalled that I just uttered those words. You'll live, I'll live, we'll all move on. But, anyways, just remember, you guys, that the enemy is not your child. And so this scenario assumes that you are having spontaneous or sudden issues in your relationship, not regular, consistent issues in your relationship, because those are two different things. Anyways, but the hardest thing, you guys, about step two, remembering that your enemy is not the kid, it's their influence, is that codependence in particular is very difficult to navigate, because not only for the life of your child or whoever's in your life, but also for the life of their influence, right? This has almost always been invisible. Codependence as a family dynamic has been present and practiced most likely for the entire life of whoever you're dealing with, right? For their entire life, codependence is how things were taught. Codependence is how things were learned. Codependence is the example that was set. And so when we start talking about codependence, the issue is that more than likely it's not just a thread that you're tugging on. More than likely you're tugging on their entire outfit, like you're pulling at the fabric of their existence. And so when you start talking about things like codependence, I just want you guys to know you have to tread carefully. You have to tread tenderly, because if you pull too hard, you're going to get extreme resistance because you are pulling on the fabric of somebody's life. You're pulling on the fabric of somebody's consciousness and existence. And what they're trying to do is pass these traits on to your children. What they're trying to do is pass on this model, this behavior, this dynamic to your kids. And so by default, if you're coming into these struggles with your child and you start teaching your kids a better way, the other person, the background influence, is going to have huge reactions and issues because in teaching your kids a better way, by default, you're also teaching your kids that there's a worse way. And that worse way is through codependence. That worse way is through enabling. Anyways, because this is invisible, the codependence, the enabling is invisible to the background influence. I mean, something that I used to hear all the time from my mom, in particularly, was that I was being disrespectful, right? Like, oh, you're being disrespectful. No. In fact, the number one issue that I had growing up was that I was smart enough to see things, right? To recognize things. Like I pissed off my parents, I pissed off my church, I pissed off the wrong teachers, all because I just had questions. I was like, wait, why are we doing this? You guys, I used to get myself beat, like actually physically beat for the simple question, why? Why? And for those of you out there who find why to be a threatening question, genuinely fix yourself. Because there is not a child alive who has ever come into this world who has not asked the question, why? So if you find that threatening, if you find that appalling, if you find that to delegitimize what you're doing, the issue isn't the question why. The issue is what you're trying to cover up by not answering why. And for those of you who are actually in earnest, you want to learn, you guys, it's perfectly fine. It is 100% acceptable to say, I don't know. I say that regularly to my children. They will get questions from me. I'm like, that's a good question. I don't know. And one of our number one things that I enjoy doing is like, we will sit down and we will ask Google together. I'll be like, that's a great question. Let's look it up. And so we look it up, we type in the question, and together we learn things. And sometimes Google doesn't have the answers. Sometimes the answers don't line up with my experience. And so I say that, this is what Google says. This doesn't line up with my experience, but that's another perspective. This is what Google says, but Google doesn't know. What do you think? And so we grow and we learn together. But if you find the question why to be threatening, you need to do better. And that's just a blanket statement because I have all confidence that it's true. If you find the question why to be tugging at the thread of your existence, the issue is not the question. The issue is what you're trying to defend. Okay, moving on. Step 3 to dealing with a codependent influence in your kids' life is after step 1, you've given your kids some space and you've taken some space. And then after step 2, you remember that your kid is not the enemy. Step 3 is that you clarify what the real issue is, what the truth is, and then the most important thing to take away, the most important thing to learn, right? And it's difficult because, even within this single episode, there are so many things to learn. I could probably make episodes on at least 5 other things that we've already talked about. And I don't even know how far into this we are, but we're pretty far. Anyways, I'm going to plug in my laptop because it is dying. But when it's all said and done, you guys, the third step is to clarify what the issue is and to clarify what the truth is. And then to clarify what the most important thing to walk away with is. Now, remember, you cannot do step 3 without first doing step 1. Because if I am emotionally charged going into situations, I'm not going to get the best result. Just as if the other person is emotionally charged, in this example, my kids, they're not going to get the best result either. So we have to take step 1 before we can get to step 3. That's the other thing, is that we also can't get to step 3 if we don't know what the real issue is, what the real enemy is here. Okay. The real issue and the real enemy is the influence and the lessons being taught, not the child. So if we're treating the child as the issue, all you're doing is creating distance because it's not them. They're not the problem, you guys. So step 3 is to clarify the issue, clarify the truth, and then clarify what we need to walk away with. And here's what I cannot emphasize the most, okay? Which I took away much too late as a parent that was raised in a highly religious household, okay? Truth stands alone. Truth is completely and wholly independent of anything that I say or anything that I do. Another way of putting that is that if I am needing to defend something, it's probably not the truth. Okay? Because the truth doesn't need you to defend it. The truth stands alone. And so, if in step 3 you find yourself needing to defend certain things, it's probably ego, you guys. It's probably ego. You have probably vested yourself in something that you shouldn't have, right? In your ability to do things, in your rightness, in your knowledge, or in your relationships, but you've probably vested yourself in something you shouldn't have. And if you find yourself defending anything in step 3, right, and clarifying the issue, clarifying the truth, and teaching the proper lesson, if you're defending something, it's probably your ego. So back to step 1, take some space, because if you need to take some space to recognize you are not where you need to be, that is okay. I will go till the day I die being somewhere I don't belong. I will go to the day I die probably preaching or talking about something that is not quite right, and that's okay. That is the point of existence. The point of my being on this planet, just as the point of your being on this planet, is not to be perfect. Talk about boredom. Can you imagine somebody that was born into this life perfect and then left this life perfect? I can't think of a more vanilla, bland existence than coming into this life and never making errors, never making mistakes or issues. The issues, the errors, sometimes those are the most colorful parts of life. Not always. But you guys, if you're defending your ego, take a step back, repeat step 1. You need to do some work, and that's okay. Because oftentimes, like when I take my car into the mechanic, and they're like, hey, bro, yeah, so you came in for your brakes, but you got an issue with your drivetrain, and you got an issue with, your transmission, and you got an issue. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Because more often than not, right, like trouble signs aren't the sign of just one thing, but a network of things that aren't working. And so if you have to take some space for yourself to figure out what's not working before you're able to successfully teach or pass on to your kids, that's okay. It's called being human. And by golly, I will sing it to the housetops, or whatever the phrase is. It's okay to be human. I'm here for it. I'm here for you. I'm here for me. I'm here for our humanness. Anyways, so now that you know the steps of how to deal, I guess, with any influence that you don't really want in your life or for your kids or anything along those lines, what's next, right? So we've taken space for ourselves. We've taken space for our kids. We remember that our kids or the person in front of us is not the enemy. And then most importantly, we clarify what the real issue is. We clarify what the truth is. And then we clarify what we need to walk away with. The final step is to take action, right? And for me, my final action this past, special occasion was, I was like, no, I'm not participating in this. Like, this isn't your plan. And more importantly, the things that you're asking me for are not things that you're asking me for. It's things that you've been pressured into asking me for. I'm not participating in this. And so I didn't. And I think that this is where a lot of parents, specifically parents that are emotionally sensitive, are going to hit a roadblock, right? Because I'm going to ask the question that is probably on everybody's minds. What if this makes me the bad guy, right? What if doing the right thing or being a good example or doing what I believe in, right? What if that makes me a bad guy? And I would like to get into that part of this discussion by talking about Batman and Joker. Copywritten DC, don't sue me. Anyways, once upon a time, he was like, I don't know, 6 or 7, but my oldest asked me, he's like, hey, Dad, who's your favorite superhero? And we were just talking, and it's not Batman, just so everybody knows, but Batman came up in the discussion. And he's like, well, who's your favorite bad guy? And then we started talking about it. And I'm like, well, Bud, what is a bad guy? Well, a person who does bad things. Okay. Well, question for you, Bud. If you were to ask Joker who the bad guy is, what would he say? And, at the time, my oldest, he stopped and he's like, huh. Well, if you asked the Joker who the bad guy was, the Joker would say Batman was the bad guy. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. That is exactly correct. That is absolutely 100% correct. So if the Joker says that Batman is the bad guy, but Batman says the Joker is the bad guy, but who's the real bad guy, right? Like, who is the bad guy? And he's like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know. And so that brought us to the conclusion of that discussion that I had years ago, which I'm going to share with you now, right? Which is, you guys, here's the absolute truth, another truth of this existence, is that everybody, it does not matter who you are, everyone that has walked, that will walk, or currently walks now is or will be the bad guy in somebody's story. It's just how it is. Everybody you have ever met, will ever meet, or currently know now is the bad guy to somebody else. Plain and simple. Bubble burst. There is nobody that is the good guy in everyone's story. So, since you're going to be the bad guy no matter what, since you're going to be the bad guy regardless as to what you do it for the right reason, right? Because if I'm going to be the bad guy no matter what, if I'm going to be the bad guy regardless as to what I do, well, then I damn well better make sure that I'm being the bad guy for the right reasons, right? And that was kind of the conclusion that I came to with my oldest. And so, you guys, at the end of the day, the question isn't really about good guys or bad guys, right? The question comes down to, well, what do I do about what people think about me? And again, this is probably going to have to be for another episode. For everyone listening, for everyone watching, you guys, who cares what other people think about you? Who cares if other people judge you? In fact, the area that I live in right now is like one of the first world problem areas. But like the area that I live in right now, like the biggest issue that my neighbors have is like keeping up with, the lawn decorations of each other, or is keeping up with each other's like weekend toys, like the side by sides or the boats and all that other stuff. But it's not even first world problems. It's like fanatical elementary school problems, right? Like we're back to elementary school, or with like who's got the coolest mechanical pencil or who's got the coolest looking eraser. And so it's so elementary that it's a little embarrassing, but it is what it is. But anyways, in the place that I live in, people are extremely sensitive to outside opinions. People are extremely sensitive to what others think. And I genuinely mean this when I say I feel so badly for so many people of the society that I live in right now. Because if you care more about others people's opinions than your own, you are trapped in the life they have set for you, not your own. Does that make sense? If you care more about what other people think and say than what you think and say, then you're trapped in the life that they've created for you, not the life that you want for yourself. And we're going to get into that a completely other time. But if you want to live their life, then stay attached to their opinions. Stay attached to their feedback and what they have to say. But if you want to live your best life, if you want to live your greatest happiness, you guys, you have to stay most concerned about the worth you are finding from your choices. Okay? The worth you are finding from your choices. This does not mean that outside feedback is useless, because that's not true. This does not mean that other people's opinions should not be important, because that's also not true. But what I am saying is that you should not let people's opinions shape your life. You should not be more concerned about what others think than what you think. And again, we'll talk about this in another episode of self-love and self-worth. But ultimately, if that's your concern, is about being the bad guy, right? Because the bad guy is just the person that objectively more people think is doing the wrong thing. I can't help you. You're not far enough along yet. We will get you there. We will get you far enough along. But today, right now, if that's your worry and your concern, you're not ready yet. And that's okay. You don't have to be ready for everything all the time. I am not ready right now if the foundation of my home cracked. Why? Because I'm not a general contractor. I don't do that. If the foundation of my home cracked, well, frick, I'd have to call somebody to fix it. If there is a break in my sewage line, I'm not ready to deal with that, but I know who to call. You guys, you don't have to be ready for everything all the time. It's a ridiculous, asinine expectation, and I don't know who gave it to you, but screw them. You don't have to be ready for everything. You just have to be ready for you. Are you ready for you, for your happiness, for your success? Are you ready for you? That's all that I'm worried about. Anyways, so all back to square one. Let's bring it back to the very beginning of this episode. Do we, as parents, should we teach our kids to fish or do we give them a fish? And as we talked about in the very beginning, you guys, it's both, right? It's both. And for the sake of, I guess, the comparison, if you don't know how to fish yet, learn. You guys, it's okay to not know things. Learn. Because not only as you learn will you grow personally, but you will set a fantastic example for your kids that it's okay to be them. It's okay to be themselves and to not know. And when we don't know, we grow and become better. Or we shrink from the challenge and we miss an opportunity. So if you don't know how to fish, you guys, that's okay. Learn. And hopefully through this channel, you'll pick up a couple things or two. Anyways, this final last bit is kind of a word of caution, okay? Because specifically for those of you who like to give a fish too often, and if this applies to you, you've probably already skipped, you've probably already moved on, you're probably already talking badly about me somewhere on social media. Cool, go for it, have fun, best of luck. But for those of you that like to give a fish too often, not sometimes, but too often, family, I'm not saying that your motives are bad, okay? And I'm also not saying that you're a bad person. But all things in moderation, right? All things in moderation. If you like to give a fish too often, you probably like to feel loved. And you probably like your kids to feel loved. And when you give that fish, it checks both boxes. You feel loved because you're giving. They feel loved because they're getting. If you like to give a fish too often, you like to feel able and to do things within your ability, right? So when you're giving the fish, hey, look, I'm capable of doing a thing. Look at me, I'm capable. Doesn't that feel good, right? And then most importantly too, you also, if you like giving a fish too often, you want your kids to see that you're able, right? Because so it also checks both boxes. Hey, look at me, I can do the thing, I'm capable. Oh, hey, look, kids, I'm awesome too because I'm giving you a fish and so I'm the hero. You guys, these are all good intentions. Good intentions. However, if your reward center for your relationship with your kids relies upon your need for them to rely upon you, right? Let's unpackage that. If your reward center in your life is for your kids to need you, you are hindering their growth. Plain and simple. You are hindering their growth. Because when it's all said and done, one of the few truths that we can take to the bank, that we can guarantee, is that we're going to die. Plain and simple. All of us, me sitting here, you watching, are going to die. So if you have created a circumstance where your kids need you before they can do things, you have set them up to fail because you will not always be here. You will not always be here, same as everybody around you, same as me sitting in this chair. If your reward center for your kids is that they have to rely upon you, you have set them up for failure and you are hindering their growth for the sake of your desire to feel important. So, if you are hindering your kids' growth for the sake of feeling important in your own life, that's because that's all that you are capable of, not because that's all that they are capable of. You guys, kids are resilient and they are astounding, truly, genuinely. Um, there are so many mitigating factors. And again, most importantly, I am not an authority on all things children or all things parenting. But if your only way of creating success with your children is their reliance upon you, then you have set them up for failure because someday you will not be here. It's okay for them to be successful without you. It's okay for them to be happy without you. It's okay for them to do well without you because guess what? That happiness, that success, you were a part of. And if you help them find it, the relationship that you will cultivate with them will be infinitely greater than the existence you've created where they can't do things without you. If any of this describes you, the need to keep your children dependent on you so that you are able to find rewards and happiness, you guys do better. Be better. And together, right? Because that's not just you. Like, I need to do better. I need to be better at so many things. So, together, let's learn more. Let's be more. And let's set our kids up for the greatest success and happiness that they've ever known. Um, anyways, this was a huge rant. I mean, who knows who will ever watch this episode? But you guys, family and otherwise, you matter. We do need you here. I need you here. But needing you here does not make everything that we do okay. Let's do better. Let's be better. And as we set ourselves up for success, simultaneously, we will also set our kids up for success. Okay? All right. Thanks for joining, you guys. This is a spontaneous, impromptu episode of The Middle Aged Dad. I'm T-Mad. Have a great weekend. Aloha, ahuiho, e malamapono. End. How do I end? End stream? Is that a thing? Am I being watched? The camera's still on. End stream. Please? Can I? Oh, there we go.